I just want to say this must be a common issue because I did this one on my daughter's truck. This is hers. She just happened to pull up first, but here's ours, and I'm going to get to it in a second. I just want to tell you the wheel bearing, or what is known now as the whole hub assembly on these newer trucks, went bad. You could really shake the tire, jack it up, and there's a lot of movement when I pull in and out on this tire. Not a lot, not as bad as my daughter's was, which caused dash lights on her pickup. I believe it was like stability control or something like that, but definitely movement here. I noticed it on our last trip we took. Anytime I put pressure to the left on the steering wheel, like even going straight, you could really hear it. Almost felt like we were on the edge of the rumble strips or something. But let's get to it. I'm just going to pop off this tire right here. Pretty simple. 19 millimeter socket, impact, and off it comes. I like to put it underneath the truck, just a little safety. I also just taken a jack stand and sticking it under there. It didn't quite make it tight, but it's there just in case. Always better to be safe than sorry when you're dealing with death. Here we're going to go ahead and take off the caliper, the outer part first, and that 13 millimeter socket takes those right off. I like to put the bolts right back in where they came from when I'm done, and I won't lose them. Here I'm just going to take a zip tie and hang this off of something that's convenient in a convenient location so I don't put a bunch of pressure and weight there on the brake line. All right, we're going to get to this housing next. Here I'm putting the bolts back in there. Actually, I'm going to pull off these brake pads, just kind of giving them a look. It seemed like the outside one had wore a little bit more than the inside one. I went ahead and took a Sharpie and just wrote front and back on them. They still have a lot of life left in them. Here, going to pop this off. This is kind of the fixed part of the caliper. It's some big bolts back there. They're on there pretty tough, but get a breaker bar or something, they'll come right out. That's that. Putting the bolts back in there too, just so easier to find when I need to. Here, I'm just going to pop this dust cover off. I just hit it with a little WD. I tried it with a screwdriver first, but it wasn't coming off. 13 millimeter pulls this right off. Here, I went ahead and popped the snap ring out, but I didn't have to. You don't have to do this. So it didn't matter that I did because it all is going away. But next, I had the rotor was completely frozen to the hub here. So I tried myself first here with some heat and beating on it, and it just wasn't doing nothing. I spent a lot of time working on this, making a lot of noise, heating it up, and then my neighbor was kindly enough to come over with 2 more torches, and we just really heated this thing up, spent some time, got it pretty hot. First hit after that, it popped right off. So if you have this problem, just go ahead and take the time to put a lot of heat to it right off the bat. Just kind of do it right where it's mounting directly to the hub. Just the rust and everything causes it to seize on there. 1 hit, 2 hit, done. You've seen it pop. Let it cool a little bit. Now I'm taking it off. All right, time to start pulling off this whole hub piece that went bad that has the bearings inside of it. So I'm back there. One of them, the bottom one's kind of tricky to get into. There's just not a lot of room. Seemed like a brake. I used a 1/2-inch braking bar instead of a ratchet with the socket because the 1/2-inch stuff's always a little bit bigger, but you'll figure it out. You could use a wrench if you had to. Not a big deal. So here, there's a little sensor in there. It's kind of filled with dirt. I cleaned it out a little bit. But it's just a little Allen. I drove that in there just so I could make sure I was all the way in. You might not have to take this off here, but I just went ahead and did it. You don't have to take the dust shield off either. You can slip all that sensor wire that goes up under the hood off, right? There's a little cavity, and you can kind of finagle it in and out of there. It's not a problem. You don't have to take that dust shield off. So yeah, this thing got hot. You can tell it's gritty. You know, it doesn't spin well. You can tell the bearings just went bad. We got some rough roads here where we live. I don't know what caused it. I think it's a bad design. Kind of, I was talking to the guy in the auto parts store. He was saying the same thing. And, you know, my daughter's went bad. Mine went bad. So it must be an issue. Here, I'm just cleaning that out a little bit. I want to get all the rust off where the hub met the rotor right there. So I put some WD-40 and a Scotch-Brite pad and got a little bit of it with my pocket knife, some of the whatever else was on there, but it came right off. Here I'm just showing you that cable that goes up under the hood for the sensor. I'm on the battery side of the engine compartment, which would be the passenger side. And just right up there by the firewall, you trace it, you'll see where it goes. It ended up being really tight inside that, that clip there. I don't know why. It was kind of a nightmare to get off. This part's all easy. Right there you can see where you don't have to take the dust shield off. Stuck that bolt back in there. Here I'm starting to pry these off, but I looked at the new part and it had the new Christmas tree things that pop in those holes, so I just went ahead and took some end cutters and cut those things right off to make it simple. Pull that thing out, throw it away. All right, let's put in the new hub assembly here. So I just got to remember to feed that behind that dust shield. You got to kind of tilt that hub at an angle to put it in there. I mean, you could remove the dust shield, but it's not really needed. So I just be aware of it when you're putting it back on. It goes pretty easy. There's an O-ring on this thing, so I just kind of tighten these bolts, slowly back and forth, little cross pattern to pull everything tight and where it needs to be before I torque it down. I couldn't really get a torque wrench, I believe, on that bottom one. Everything else I torqued down to, I think it was around 148 pounds. Not a lot of room in here. Sometimes it's a little sketch. That's why you want to have a safety. You're putting a lot of torque on there. And, if something wasn't right and you only had one thing, you're almost moving the truck when you're doing this. So always good to have a couple safeties there and keep stuff out of the way in case something happened. Cat there was just finding my socket for me, dropped it off. All right, putting this little nut back on there, 13 millimeter socket. That one's like 20 pounds. I believe I didn't use a torque wrench on that. I just kind of felt it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clean inside here really good. I don't want to have that same issue again or someone else to have it in the future. So just cleaning this up with a little bit of WD-40 and a Scotch-Brite pad, just trying to get the majority. And then I'm going to put anti-seize on here. It's not really inside the stud holes, but kind of everywhere it's going to meet up to that hub assembly. Should let it just pop right off in the future. I'm going to spray the back of that down with brake cleaner and clean that all off because you can't really get in there once it's on. Want to avoid getting any oil or grease or anything on your rotors. Here I got my bolts right where I needed them. Going to hold that up against there and put this fixed part of the caliper back on here. These are, I'm not sure exactly on the torque spec on this, but this torque wrench I got only goes up to 150, so I just gave her all she had. I'm going to clean off the front of this with some brake cleaner. Man, I tell you what, they got those aerosol or air-filled cans at Harbor Freight for about, I forget how much they are, but they're worth it. Buy a gallon of brake fluid. A lot cheaper that way than the little cans. Putting the brake pads back in. Had them labeled. No guesswork. Little caliper bolts going back in. I checked and made sure they were still moving freely. Otherwise, I would have taken the boots off, cleaned them up on a wire wheel, and put some caliper grease on there and put it back together. But they seem to be working fine. Just going to run this sensor back up and put it back where it went and back up under the engine compartment. There you go, snap. Actually, it didn't snap. It was a pretty tight fit. All right here I get a major Charlie horse. Normally I'd kind of sit and spread my legs out and put them under the tires, but I was trying to stay out of the way of the camera. I don't know if you've had one of these, but they sure hurt. So that's how I'd normally do it. Ladder's in my way here, but just put your legs under there, get comfortable, and makes it a lot easier. Grab the impact and buzz them back up. I forgot something if anybody noticed. I find it later when I'm cleaning up. Dropping it back down on the ground, I'm going to torque these down to 150 pounds. That's what they call for. Well, not paying attention, getting to cleaning it up and realizing I forgot to put this little dust cover on. So I'm going to have to jack it up, take the tire back off, and put this back on.